settlements, also Gomer with all its troops, and Beth Togarmah from the far north with all its troops, the many nations with you. Ezekiel 38, verses 3 through 6. This invasion by Magog includes a number of allies listed by their ancient tribal names. Meshach was the sixth son of Japheth, the son of Noah. He is identified with the ancient Mushkai of the Assyrians and the Mushjoi of the classical Greek writers. Assyrian inscriptions describe them as inhabiting Phrygia in the northern Anatolia, modern Turkey. Herodotus identifies the Mushki with the mountains southeast of the Black Sea, the northeast part of modern Turkey. Josephus also identifies the descendants of Meshach as dwelling in eastern Turkey. Some also link the Muskoi with the Muscovy, the name for ancient Russia. Tubal was the fifth son of Japheth and a brother of Meshach. 9th century BC Assyrian inscriptions refer to Tubal as being just west of Meshach in eastern Anatolia. Herodotus also places them both along the southeastern shores of the Black Sea. Some associate Tubal with the name of Tobolsk of Russia. So we have Russia and most of the countries that made up the old Soviet Union. Persia includes the descendants of Elam, the first son of Shem, and is now modern Iran. Iran was known as Persia until it changed its name in 1935. Iran is the leading ally in the Ezekiel list and the present major exporter of Islamic fundamentalism, so Persia covers present-day Iran and Iraq. Cush refers to the land lying to the south of Egypt, usually translated in English Bibles as Ethiopia. Originally, Cush referred to a piece of territory lying between the second and third cataracts of the Nile. Later it came to refer to a broader area known as Nubia. It is presently viewed as the area referred to as Black Africa. There are a dozen strategic materials essential to the modern military and industrial world, which is available in only two regions of the world, Russia and Africa. Zaire, for example, has 95% of the world's known reserves of chromium, 52% of its cobalt, 53% of its manganese, 64% of its vanadium, and 86% of its platinum group of metals. This is why Zaire is called the Persian Gulf of Minerals. The U.S. is almost totally dependent upon import for these critical materials. It is interesting to note that South Africa and Russia control over 90% of the world's supply of platinum, over 94% of the world's supply of manganese, and over 90% of the chrome, over 95% of the vanadium. Russia is self-sufficient in 26 of the 36 minerals considered essential for an industrial society, importing only 3 important minerals, bauxite, barium, and fluoride. So we have Ethiopia and parts of Central and Southern Africa. The next ally of Magog in Ezekiel 38. Put was the third son of Ham, the son of Noah. Josephus identifies him as the founder of Libya, whose inhabitants were called Putites. Put is associated with North Africa, populated by the Berbers and tribes distinct from Cush. Put encompassed the area from present-day Libya to Mauritania and the Maghreb, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco. So we have Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco. The next ally mentioned is Gomer. In the Babylonian Talmud, the biblical Gomer, the father of Ashkenaz, is rendered Germania. Gomer is also associated with the Cimmerians, who originally established themselves in the Rhine and the Danube valleys, but were eventually forced out of that area and into the area of Cappadocia, which today is in central and north-central Turkey. Josephus identified the people of Galatia with Gomer. He says that the people the Greeks called the Galatians were the Gomerites. Today, these Gomerites live in the west central part of Turkey. Togarmah is one of the sons of Gomer. The Assyrians called them Til-Garamu, a name derived from the Hittite city Teragarma, and carried into classical times as Geronima, presently known as Garun, 70 miles west of Malata. The city was destroyed by Sennacherib in 695 BC. The Armenians still refer to themselves as the House of Togarmah, even to this day. So Togarmah is the present-day area that covers Turkey and Turkestan. All of the allies of Magog, Russia, are very well defined, and one thing they all have in common is that they are Muslim. The intense hatred of Muslims towards Israel will unite them in a common cause to completely annihilate Israel off the face of the earth. The breakup of the Soviet Union released the Central Asian republics, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, to join their Islamic brothers in the Magog invasion. These 5 independent republics are Islamic, have nuclear weapons, and may be the hooks in the jaw that draw Magog into battle. The Sword of Allah. Fight and slay the pagans, infidels, wherever you find them, and seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war. It's in the Quran, Surah 9:5. Believers, Muslims, take neither Jews nor Christians to be your friends. They are friends with one another. Whoever of you seeks their friendship shall become one of their number, and God does not guide those Jewish and Christian wrongdoers. The Quran, Surah 551 through 574. The Islamic agenda can no longer be ignored. They now have the resources, oil revenues, and now nuclear weapons. Their jihad is not just against the Jews, it is directed against the entire non-Muslim world. The world of Islam divides the entire universe into only 2 parts: Dar al-Islam, the domain of the faithful to Islam, and the Dar al-Harb, those whom they are at war with until Judgment Day. Islam commands almost 2 billion adherents and is clearly the fastest growing religion in the world today. In this 21st century, Islam is the greatest threat to Christianity and the free world. In Britain, there are more Muslims than evangelical Christians. More than 1,000 churches have been converted into mosques. There are more Muslims than Jews in North America. There are almost 2,000 mosques in the U.S. It is interesting to note that Islam did not begin with Muhammad. Before the advent of Muhammad, the Sabians in Arabia were into astral religion, the worship of heavenly bodies. The moon was viewed as a male deity, the sun a female deity. The stars were viewed as their offspring. It was from this background that we got our lunar calendar. Fasting was, and still is, done from crescent moon to crescent moon. One of the names for the moon god was Sin. Sin was elevated to the top of the Babylonian pantheon by Nabonidus in an effort to make the Babylonian religion more acceptable to their subjects like the Arabians and the Arameans, who esteemed the moon god and had difficulty identifying with Marduk, the supreme Babylonian deity associated primarily with the city of Babylon. Sin, the controller of the night, had the crescent moon as its emblem, and the lunar-based calendar, which later became the primary religious symbol of Islam. The moon god was worshipped in Arabia as Allah, later became simplified to Allah. Allah was the lord of the Kaaba, or the cube, the center of pagan worship, ruling over 360 idols. Due to its location along the trade routes, Mecca became the center of all pagan religions of Arabia. It was required long before Muhammad to bow and pray toward Mecca. Pilgrimages there were required. The Kaaba, the site of the protective black stone, was circled 7 times, kissed, and then the pilgrims would run to the Wadi Mina to throw stones at the devil. These pagan rituals are still practiced in Islam today. The nature of Islam is a legacy of hate, born of deception, weaned on violence. Islam means submission. Originally, it referred to that strength which made a desert warrior, who, even faced with impossible odds, would fight for the death for his tribe. The nature of Allah, the God of Islam, differs greatly from the Christian God. The Islamic Allah is unknowable, impersonable, capricious, thus untrustworthy. The God of the Old Testament is immutable, unchanging, and makes and keeps his covenants and promises. Important contrast between Muhammad and Jesus Christ. Muhammad was not sinless, the Surah 40:55, nor did he ever perform a single miracle, Surah 17:91-95. He did not die for anyone, unlike Jesus Christ. No personal relationship is possible. Muhammad is dead. It is not the size of Israel that is the problem with Islam. It is the existence of Israel that is the problem. All of Islam is irrevocably committed to the total destruction of Israel. So it does not matter how much land Israel gives up or how many concessions they make. As long as Israel is still in existence, there will always be a thorn in the side of Islam. Could the battle of Ezekiel 38 be the Islamic attempt to remove this thorn from their side once and for all? Russia has aligned themselves with most of the nations listed in Ezekiel 38, being their provider of weapons, and even going as far as signing treaties with these nations to protect them in case of war. So the hook in the jaw has been set. I believe God is already tugging on the line. Get ready, be prepared, you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. Ezekiel 38 verse 7. Magog, Russia, is to be both the leader and provider. It is no coincidence that Russia is presently the major provider of weapons and technology to the very allies listed. After many days you will be called to arms. In the future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. Ezekiel 38:8. Magog, Russia, will lead the invasion against Israel. After being dispersed for almost 2,000 years, God miraculously regathered the people back to their promised land, just as the Bible predicted. You and all your troops and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land. Ezekiel 38:9. All the allies of Magog are Islamic and are united in their hatred of Israel. They will be united by their common denial of Israel to exist as a nation and the commitment to their complete annihilation. This is what the Sovereign Lord says. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil scheme. You will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. Ezekiel 38 verses 10 through 11. Israel today is not living a peaceful lifestyle. Every Israeli has to be constantly alert and to be prepared for an attack or an act of terrorism. So this indicates that at the time of the Magog invasion, they will be living under some sort of peace agreement. They will be living under a false sense of security. Israel will let its guard down. I will plunder and loot and turn my hand against the resettled ruins, and the peoples gathered from the nations, rich in livestock and goods, living at the center of the land. Ezekiel 38